and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zeimet.
Hello and welcome to the Beverly Zeimet Show, where being the best you can be has just gotten easier. My guest today is Michele Thorne. Welcome, Michele. It's nice to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, and where are you from, Michele?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona. Wow. I've been there.
Yeah?
Time or two. Yeah. Is it warm down there now?
Oh, it'll be 90 like next week. So
Oh my
get
gosh,
there.
are you serious?
Yeah, my kids are so ready to get in the pool, so they're excited.
Oh, well, I'll bet. Yeah. We're supposed to have 70 tomorrow.
Nice.
And 2 days ago we had snow on the ground. Are you kidding?
Oh my gosh.
I know. It was like
Seriously.
the weather around has just been so crazy. So crazy. I talked to my brother down in Orlando a couple days ago, and he said it was already 95 down there, and the humidity was just nasty. And it's like it'd been over 100 years since it had been 95 at this time of year down there.
Yeah, that's not. I like Arizona. It's a dry heat.
Right.
Give me 112.
That's right. No problem.
10% humidity. I'm good. There'll be a 90% humidity. I like fall apart.
Oh, it could be nasty. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But they're not used to having 95 until at least May.
Right.
You know? So it's crazy. And then Colorado and Wyoming, they're still in blizzards. It's just crazy weather, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So, how many kids do you have, Michele?
2.
2. And what are their ages?
My son is 7 and my daughter is 4.
Oh, you got your hands full, little ones.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And you're a stay-at-home mom?
I am. So both of my children have been diagnosed with autism. So
Okay.
I was in a past life a geneticist.
Okay.
I worked in a genetics lab. I was, published in peer-reviewed journal articles. But when my children got diagnosed, I kind of had to stay home to get them to therapies and, pick up to doctor's appointments and do all of those things as special needs moms do.
Wow. That's got to be, sometimes probably has its challenges, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially now in the world we're living with this pandemic, has really thrown the special needs community for a loop, for sure.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's something that I don't think our listeners really know a lot about. And to be able to understand, when you say special needs, because that takes in a wide arena of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And, and so with 2 kids being special needs, and they're both autistic, but again, autism is not always the same, right?
Oh, it's incredible. So my son is more affected by autism than my daughter is. So my son is nonverbal, but can still communicate with us. So he has an AAC device, alternative communication device that he uses. So he can still talk to us and make sentences and get his point across. And my daughter is 4 and she is very verbal. She makes up for him. And her autism presents very differently because girls just mask their autism a lot better than boys do. So we didn't even think she was autistic until we went to put her in this community school, and they screen all of their children. And as they were doing the screening process, I was watching her do it and going, oh, crap, And afterwards they were like, how do you think it went? And I was like, I don't think she has autism. And they were like, yeah, so do we. So,
oh my gosh.
Kind of a crazy house, but at this point, we don't know what typical is. We don't know what a typical child is. And so we don't know any wiser, and so it's like we're not really missing out because we don't know what that other half looks like.
Well, you know what? There's pros and cons on both sides of that fence, right?
Oh yeah,
Right?
for sure,
Right?
for sure.
And, you know, and again, the norm becomes the norm with what, you know, with what you're dealing
all of
with.
their children.
Right?
Yeah. And as they were doing the screening
you know,
process,
and it's,
I was watching
so it's
her
a
do
different
it
way
and
of
going,
living,
oh,
I'm sure. So
you know.
being
And
out in
afterwards
the
they were
field,
like,
you know,
how do
as
you think it
were,
went? And I was like, I don't think she has autism.
the
And they were like,
position and stuff that you did
so
to
do
be able
we.
to,
So,
you know,
kind of
do
a
what
crazy
your passion
house,
was, I guess
but
you would say, right?
at this point,
Yeah.
we don't know what typical
Evidently,
is.
it
We
put
don't
you in
know what a typical
alignment
child is.
to be able to
So
better handle
we don't know any wiser,
your
and so
children
it's
and
like
know
we're not really
what
missing
their
out
needs
because
are
we don't
to
know
get
what that other
them,
half looks
you know,
like.
through life in the most well, you know what? There's productive pros and cons on
way.
both sides of that fence, and
Oh, yeah.
give them
For
that
sure.
highest quality
For sure.
of life that you can. Can you share with our audience too on, you know, what is it if you do find yourself having a child that needs special needs, whether it's autism or something else, is there anything that you can share with the audience to help make that better?
The
What
Beverly
can you
Zeimet
do
Show.
that line of communication, because you know, most people have no clue when all of a sudden their child gets diagnosed and they're like, oh my God, what do I do? Right?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is your child is still your child, right? So the child that you walked into that diagnosis appointment with is the same child that you're walking out with. You know, the only thing that's really changed is you might have a name to call whatever it is that's going on, but then that also means that you now have resources and you have help and you have hopefully tools that'll help you help your child get to a certain place. The other thing I would say is to take care of yourself. So I started my company DAMES, which is Differently Abled Mothers Empowerment Society, because I could see that the parents who are taking care of these special needs children are maxed out. I mean, we are stressed to the limits usually because there's a lot to worry about, there's a lot to juggle, there's a lot to handle, but there's nobody taking care of us.
Right.
And if we, you know, if we fall off the cliff, what happens to our children? And so the self-care component of raising a special needs children is huge, and something that it takes a while for parents to realize that they need to be helping themselves on this journey, and it's not selfish. It's actually the best thing you could possibly do for your child.
So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, with the organization that you put together, how would they reach you with that? You know, how would they
Yeah,
find
so we're all over social media.
Okay. Well, sometimes the algorithms don't help you out, you know?
That's true, yes. So it's Dames USA is our moniker. So on Facebook, you would type in Dames USA. The same thing on Instagram. That's our website too, www.damesusa.com. And so that's the easiest way to find us.
Right.
They need to be helping themselves on this.
Now, are you a nonprofit organization or just a support group of people? How does it work?
Not. We are right now developing our nonprofit so that we can start doing a private-public partnership type thing. When everything that we provide at Dames falls within a nonprofit, but because I am one person with 2 special needs children, and running a nonprofit is such a huge amount of work.
It is.
I was like, there's, you know, I'm all about what can I handle and what can I manage, and I was like, I can manage an LLC, taking in a monthly membership fee or a yearly membership fee, and calling it a day. And now that that's all running and going well, we're going to start up the charity arm this next year.
Okay. Have you found, you know, people that
we
have
are
come into that
right
group
now developing our
want to
nonprofit so that
assist
we
you
can
and
start
maybe
doing a
take off
private-public
some of that
partnership,
load on you
type thing,
and, you know,
when
and work
everything
with you
that
on
we
that?
provide at Dames. Yes, and I'm glad I waited for that reason. So because of waiting and joining different groups and different organizations, I found a lot of other mothers who I was like, see the vision and really want to get involved. And so we have a dynamic board that is already assembled, and it's going to be taking in a month. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, that is precious. When we look at the theme of what we're accomplishing here, it's being that best you that you can be, right? So what can you do on a daily basis that's going to help you become that better you? But better yet, what are you going to do to help others become that better them? And it's about uniting, and that's one thing I wanted to accomplish with this show, was to be able to bring women like yourself on to share your story, to share what's going on, to let the audience know that they're not alone out there regardless of what it is, and to be able to reach out. So anyone out there that's got questions, comment below, right? And you can click on it here and get a hold of Michele, and go to her Dames USA, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Dames USA. And there'll be a link above here too, so you'll be able to click on those. So it'll make it easy for you, right?
Awesome.
But so to be able to share these things and to help others understand, sometimes we get caught up in things, and you get tired, you get stressed out, and you're exhausted, and like you say, after the kids are in bed, and then you just like collapse, and it's like, oh my gosh, now what?
Yeah.
And it's like, when is this going to end?
Yeah.
Right? And then you kind of have your sad moment, your pity party moment, and then it's like you go to bed and you get up the next day, that's gone, and you do it all over again.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So to be able to have that support, though, that support team, to be able to work with other parents who are in the same boat, and to be able to help those that really have no clue. They've heard about it, they've heard about autism, they've heard about special needs of different kinds, but they don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to reach because the doctors aren't helping them out.
Oh no, you get no roadmap at all. No. You're just like, your kid has autism.
It's like, okay, what does that mean?
Great, thanks,
It's not like your kid's got measles, It's,
right, exactly.
Right. And again, I think there's a lot of fear based around autism and what it means, It used to be, you go back in the day when there was, kids with what's the word I want? I can't even think of the word. Down syndrome, right? And that was like the big thing, right? Yeah. And I remember I had 2 cousins that had Down syndrome, one on my mom's side and one on my dad's side. It was quite interesting, and one was a boy and one was a girl, but it was like night and day.
Yeah.
Right. And growing up with them, I mean, you're kids, a kid, you don't know the difference. And and Virgil, I mean, he was a big boy for his age. He was big, and he was strong, right? And we'd be playing, and then he wouldn't want to take his turn, right? And then the fights would start, and then everybody's screaming, and it's like, Virgil won't let us play, Oh my gosh. So, so his mom had to come in and talk him down and take away. Then he was fine again for a while. But, and those are the kind of the things that you remember. And then the girl, she was always just so quiet and peaceful, and she stayed at home. Her mom raised her. She was a single mom, and she raised her all her life. And, gosh, she lived to be, she was in her 70s, and her mom was in her 90s, right? Oh, wow. And actually, the mother died before the daughter did, and I often wondered, because I lost track of them, what happened? Own little apartment, and he had another person living with him, so there was 2 of them, and they would go get on the bus, and they'd go to their little job, and they'd come back home, and this is up in Minneapolis, right? So when you're looking at autism, I mean, you can't really compare the 2 because they're definitely not even related, but they're still, special needs or whatever. a child with autism, can they function in society in that
Yeah.
manner?
Oh,
And I guess it's the different levels of autism. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think it maybe depends on how they're affected, but also I think a lot of that has to do with the people who are around them and what they hear about themselves, and
okay,
what they believe their possibilities are. Because, like I said, my son is nonverbal, but we know he is extremely smart. We know he has a photographic memory because if I should have brought his talker in here, but his talker is like so complex and has all these hidden, pages in it. And so, like, to get to furniture, you have to get to certain things. And I mean, he's got the whole thing memorized, and he keeps up with his typical peers in school, but he is severely affected.
right,
Right. So, but my husband and I, never took that as an excuse for not pushing him or not getting him a way to communicate or to not think that he was not capable of doing those things.
right.
Right. Because a lot of people believe that just because they're nonverbal, maybe they don't have anything to say, which is completely
Yeah,
opposite.
opposite,
Right. I
right.
mean, he's got lots
Right.
to say. He will tell you. Um, and growing up as a scientist and being in the science realm,
Hmm.
you're around a lot of people who resemble the traits of autism, right? So a lot of
Okay.
scientists are very introverted, they're very quiet, they're very socially awkward, they're very focused on a niche, and that's all they want to really think about and talk about and do. And so, in my opinion, there's a lot of scientists out there and a lot of engineers out there who are autistic. And so for me, it was never really a question of, is there a place for them and will they be okay? It
Right.
was just more of, how do I make sure that I'm helping them get there?
Yeah, right. And keeping their self-esteem up and their confidence and everything like that, right? Which whether a child has special needs or not,
Yeah.
you know, a child still needs that same support and that same confidence, and to keep them going
Yeah.
in the direction that they're going to be sufficient
Yeah.
in themselves, right?
Exactly.
Right. And
Hmm.
so, well, that's great. That's really great. Now, so do your kids? Or, well, obviously they're home now. So you normally like homeschool them, or
They're
do
home
they?
now. um,
We're all
yes,
home now, right?
crazy. I will tell you pros and cons, right? So
Yeah.
school is out. Therapies were canceled for about 2 weeks, but my son was diagnosed at 2.5, so he's 7 now. So for 5 years, we have had therapists in and out of our house. So for the
Okay.
last 2 weeks was the first time in 5 years that there wasn't another person besides our family in our house.
Yeah.
To create like the most amazing feeling, because it was like, oh, I'm not worried about the dog running out. I'm not worried about, this other person. So I have to like get dressed. We all rocked our pajamas for like 2 solid weeks. Like, it was amazing. So that was a pretty big pro. But normally, my daughter goes to a community school where they do therapy with the school setting.
Uh-huh.
And then my son is in a self-contained classroom with the public school system. We have gotten really lucky, and his teacher is phenomenal, and his self-contained classroom is basically 7 other nonverbal autistic students.
Oh, wow.
So they all have talkers, which I think is just so cool, because they will know that they're not the only person in the world who needs a talker.
Right.
And the teachers are all trained on how to program them, how to edit them, how to teach with them. So we got really lucky and hit the jackpot on that one. So we're for right now,
Right.
in public school. I'm sure at some point, like that middle school year kind of scares me, and I'm like, all right, at some point I might have to homeschool him. But for right now, he's in public school and doing great. So
That's great because they have that social interaction still, right? Right.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's been quite a few years ago. I was around an autistic child that didn't want any. He wasn't, they weren't verbal. There's a couple of them, and they weren't verbal, but they didn't like touch. They would touch you, but they didn't want to be touched. Right? Now, what's the difference? What makes a child autistic going in different directions like that, where you say some are nonverbal, some don't like touching, others maybe just sit and rock, right?
Yeah.
Or what is the levels? What's the science behind some of that? What causes that? Is there brain dysfunction? Is it nutritional dysfunction? Is it nerves? Is it
A lot of the research has shown, again, I'm a nerd.
That's good. That's why we're asking these questions.
You're all going to learn a lot about autism today.
This is great.
So what a lot of the research shows is that children with autism have like 10 to 20 times more neurons in their brain.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so the reason why a lot of autistic children are sensitive to touch, to light, to sound is because they're getting 10 times the information that you and I are getting. So that's one of the reasons. So they think that as the child is developing, so when we develop, we have all of these neural connections. As we grow up and as we age, I think it's like 80% of those die. But for autistic children, that neural pruning doesn't happen. So they keep all of those neural connections. So that's why they can get very good and very focused on certain things and have these great memories and have these, I mean, their brains are amazing. Like, they're really amazing. Temple Grandin is a really famous autistic person, and she's a very visual person. So she can, look at something and she'll know how to do it and how to draw it. And a lot of these autistic people have photographic memories, like I'm sure my son does. So their brains just work at a completely different level, which is why they really think a lot of people like Einstein and
I was just thinking that. I'm thinking like, Einstein could have been called autistic in his day.
Yeah, people like that, Michelangelo. There's a lot of really famous and those people that are really, brilliant in one certain area, but that's because that is their whole focus, right? Like, that is like
that's all they do.
Their life. I did my graduate work with a woman who knew all about methanotrophs, and so these are bacteria that break down methane, and she could tell you where every single carbon in the system went, how, when this thing was discovered and what paper it was written in and what year and what article. I mean, she had this encyclopedia memory, and she was autistic, and, we all knew it, but she had this mind that was just boggling. I mean, it was beautiful. So, they're overstimulated most of the time. They're taking in a lot more information than you and I are.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. This is fascinating. I don't know about you guys out there, but this little girl right here, she's loving this, So it's great to be able to have you, come on and be able to share, like, the science behind it and stuff, that most people don't hear, or they don't understand because they haven't done the research, or they can't find the research, or even if they had it, wouldn't understand it, to be able to piece it together and, have a clearer understanding, so that if you are exposed to a child that needs, special direction and care and whatever, on that type of avenue, but how you even converse with the parents. I mean, I've seen where it's like okay, you have a special needs child. It's almost as if people want to shy away from them because it's like, oh, well, you're tainted, because they don't understand it, so they don't know how to have a conversation with that parent, or how do I let my children play with your child, and so they just like move away. Have you found that to be true?
Oh yeah, we've lost a lot of friends, and it's it's one of those things where you lose those friendships, but then you gain a community and you gain a tribe of people who really get you, because it's just one of those situations where unless you're really living it day to day or you're truly invested in learning about it, it's hard for people outside of the situation to really kind of grasp all of the complexities that are happening in our lives.
Sure.
And so I'll tell you this funny story because I have two sisters. And at one point when my son was diagnosed and my daughter had just gotten diagnosed, one of my sisters called me and she was crying and she was, just like hysterical because her computer broke down and she lost like a file. And I was like, wrong sister. I'm like, you got to call the other one. I'm like, I'm not like, I can't. I'm like, I can't do this. But we had to have you call the other sister clause for a little while because I couldn't handle that, that drama that to me was like, this is not a drama. You
don't know what drama is, sis. Come and live my life for one day.
Yeah. So I think it kind of, and I'm at the place now where she can tell me all those little dramas now, but when we're in the thick of it and girls and people start talking about those things that are maybe really hard for them, but then you're like, they're really that bad. It's not really that bad. You're gonna be okay. When this pandemic broke out, I started reaching out to newspapers and I started reaching out to reporters, and just to make sure that people realize that yes, what they're going through is hard, but there's this whole other community that is going through this. And, maybe you can pull yourself out of what you're thinking is bad and what you're thinking is hard by giving back to somebody else who is maybe having a harder time, right? Because I always found we get stuck in our own little worlds. And honestly, why I started Dames is because I feel better when I'm giving back to my community. I feel better when I know I'm helping somebody, and it makes my problems and my kids and their autism, it doesn't seem as bad. You know what I mean? Because I'm putting what I'm learning and I'm giving it to somebody else. And I think that that's just a good thing for everybody to do.
Well, and again, that goes back into being that best you can be. So when you start to understand who you are, right, and as a person, and how you're wanting to make a better world out here, and being able to share and to give back, because what you have in here is what you can share out here. But if you don't, if you're not strong in yourself and you don't know all it is that who you are, it makes it rougher out here, right? And then you fall in the entrapment of the victim, the martyr, the victim, right? And then you just play that little game and nobody wins. Right? Nobody wins. And so it's being able to have the confidence and the knowledge to be able to speak up and say, hey, you got this wrong. Right? Because like I said, the majority of people really don't understand what autism is. It's a word that gets used a lot these days, and it seems like more and more and more it's happening, right? And what I have seen, and I travel a lot with this autism thing, the more that you're hearing it's there, that everybody's running more and more scared, well, that's not going to happen to me, and if I stay away from it, it's contagious. I'm not going to get it. My kids aren't going to get it. It's just because they don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so to be able to share the reality of what it is and the understanding, and not just living it, but actually knowing the science behind it. Now, because you're on both sides of the fence here, was it easier for you to adjust, or was it more difficult to adjust because you know more than the norm?
Well, I really didn't know a whole lot getting into it. But I don't know. I really don't know if it to me, people get really obsessed and can get really obsessed with the, well, why did it happen kind of thing.
Right.
And for me, I was more like, well, it happened.
You can't change it. It's
they
here.
have autism.
You can't change it, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so for me, my thing has never been like, well, what caused it? And I have done some research into it just because I'm curious, but it's never been like, well, how can I fix it, or how can I make it better, or who's to blame? Like I never went down that path because I think it's unproductive. But what I do try to do is I try to read as many books written by autistic people as I possibly can, and listen to what they have to say. So there's this really, I loaned it out. I was just looking at my library. There's this really great book called The Reason I Jump, or Why I Jump. And it's written by a nonverbal autistic teenager. And it's amazing.
Okay.
And it's like this view into how they're feeling, why they have a hard time socially, that they don't like to be left out of things, that, and it's just like it opens up this whole world for you about, because I can't ask my son how he's feeling. He
Right.
can't really tap into that. So that's how I kind of try to approach it, is, listening to people who have autism, what their thoughts are and how they feel, and then trying to use that to help my children out.
Well, that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
smart. Now, does your son read? I mean, does he read
Oh.
books and things like that, or is it just a
He-
different kind of communication? Or
He has no interest in books. I hate it. I'm like, so I'll just show you like just quickly, but this is like I have so many books. I'm constantly reading everything that I possibly can.
right.
We have hundreds of children's books, and he has like no interest. Now, can he read? Yeah, he can absolutely read. He's keeping up with his class. I think he's up to 100 sight words now. If you give him a sentence and you give him like 5 pictures and say, what does that sentence say? He'll give you the right picture. So he can absolutely read. Does he want to? No.
Well,
He wants to play on his iPad, like probably every other first grader right now. So,
Uh,
That's-
I can
Yeah.
relate to that because I did not like to read.
yeah,
When I was growing up, as a kid, and even into high school and stuff. Oh my God, when we had English literature and we're supposed to read these novels, and it's like, who wants to sit here and read this book that's this fat, that doesn't pertain to, and it's so totally irrelevant to anything in my
Yeah.
belief, in what I want. So what I would do is I knew, kids that did all the reading and stuff. I'd ask them, what'd you like about that, Beck? I was good at asking questions to get the information that I needed, right? So I'd have them tell me the whole story, and then I'd be able to write the essay, from what they told me was about the book, because I could not read it. But once I, into my adult life, when I started, finding a passion, and I can remember the first book that I started to read that I couldn't put down was called Looking Out for Number One. It was Robert Ringer. This was seriously, it was back in 1972, 73, right? And I couldn't put it down. I couldn't
Yeah.
put it down. And that was the start of knowing what I wanted to read. So you give me something that has to do with metaphysics, that has to do with energy, that has to do with any type of vibration, anything psychic, any modality, homeopathic, or anything like that, right?
yeah,
I'm all over it. All
Yeah.
over it. Self-development type of things, yeah. Yeah. But you give me a plain old novel of some sort,
yeah.
I
Oh, I know.
won't
I
read
can't
it.
tell you. I can tell you the variety of children's books I have. I have graphic novels. I have just picture books with no words in it. Like he's like, nope, not his thing.
Well, you know what? He learns in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's all that matters.
Yeah. I'm like,
That's
hey,
all that matters.
I know you can read, so I'm good. As long as I know you can read, if you don't want to read, it's fine. But you have to
And
know
the
how
day
to
may
read.
come, that he does. He has the
Yeah.
ability to. but he can communicate. And
Mhm.
and again, I always said if street smart will take you further than
Mhm.
book smart,
True that.
right? Right? No matter where your level of intelligence is,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
you will survive a lot better
Yeah.
with street smarts.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, wow. I just, it's fascinating. I'm just so
Yeah.
fascinated to listen to you talk about it. And
Yeah.
so, what are some of the things that you really love to do in life?
Um, Honestly, I just love connecting with my community and learning and growing.
Okay.
I think are just kind of I'm just like I said, I'm a voracious reader. I love reading, I love learning, I love developing, and I think being stagnant is one of the things that I just do not like to do. So my
Maybe you got
husband,
more of those neurons running around up here than you think, huh?
well, when my daughter was diagnosed, I honestly had a good look at my life, and I was like, answers a lot of questions about my childhood. And I
Oh,
have
there you
talked to
go.
my, yeah, I have talked to my mother about it. And I was like, so we have Maria and we have an example of what a girl on the spectrum looks like. Do you rethink my childhood a little bit? And she's like, yeah, we knew you were a little off, but we didn't want to get you tested. I'm like, oh, thanks, Mom. It's basically how that conversation went. So yeah, I'm honestly on a list to get evaluated for autism because I do think it runs in my family. I'm now that we have seen this, I am pretty positive my father is autistic. I'm pretty positive it's just there.
Yeah.
So it definitely answers a lot of questions. So I was a geneticist, and I honestly wanted to be a geneticist since I was like in the second grade,
Oh, really?
which is crazy. So
Yeah.
growing up, I was always like, why don't these people know what they want to do? Like, come on,
I always
you're in
wanted.
eighth grade. Don't you know your
Don't you
career
know
path
what?
by
Yeah.
now?
I always wanted to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, right?
Uh,
That I mean, from little on, because I
yeah,
was really a good strategist and an instigator,
yeah,
and I had that intuitive ability, that psychic ability, and
yeah,
being little, I'd get picked on all the time. So
yeah,
for me to get even was like, oh, I could talk kids into doing anything, no matter. It didn't matter. Oh no, you're not going to get caught. I could make them believe it, and it was on purpose because I knew they'd get found out. And so I would disappear before the teacher would get there, right? And, and they would say it was my fault, right? Well, then where is she,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and then when the water would settle a little bit, I'd start all over again. But it was my way of getting even.
Funny.
So that I kind of wanted to be in that, and I really thank Spirit for not putting me into that,
Uh-huh.
because going into the alternative, work that I do is giving me more of a passion and a gratification because it makes a difference. What I
Mhm.
do makes a difference, and I don't have to put somebody on a drug. You
Mhm.
know, I can teach them different mindsets and how to get rid of the old baggage and emotional stuff. I work a lot with emotions, and not let those fuel your fire and run your life, right?
Yeah,
To make a
yeah,
difference. And so but it's still the same type of work, shall we say,
yeah,
just a
yeah,
different pathway to it.
yeah.
And so when you're talking about autism, I want to ask you this question.
Uh-huh.
You hear things all the time in the alternative that where children who have had autism
Mhm.
have been healed, shall we say, or repaired, or whatever word you want to use, but their autism had been reversed, and they don't have that anymore just by um, nutrition alone or different activities or anything like that.
Yeah,
What is your take on something like that?
I think that autism has now become such a big umbrella term.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of different modalities kind of end up under autism.
Okay.
So that I think children are being diagnosed with autism that maybe don't have classic autism, which I do believe is genetic.
Okay.
It's just that our kids are being a little more affected by our genetic blueprint than like I was or my father was. But I think that these children who recover, I think a lot of them are being affected by some kind of a nutritional thing that
Right.
is causing autism-like symptoms, but maybe it's not classic autism, maybe it's something else. And there's a lot of research to suggest that autism has become kind of an umbrella term that has a lot of other diagnoses underneath it. So I think that a lot of those kind of recovered kids maybe don't fall into the classic autism umbrella.
Well, that would make sense. That would make sense. So where would you align, say, ADD or ADHD in conjunction with autism?
They do happen a lot together. Autism, I haven't looked at the stats in a long time, but I think that ADHD and autism occur about 70% together.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so there's a lot of dual diagnoses that happen. And ADD is definitely one of those that kind of come along with autism.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to
Hmm.
know. So, is sometimes maybe it's misdiagnosed one or the other. Uh,
Yeah, I think so.
so what type of test do they give you, or, that they gave your kids, so that they said, it's like, okay, this is a classic autism.
Well, so the right now the way that they diagnose autism is with the ADOS-5, I think it is. So basically what it is a social screening. So the parents fill out questionnaires about how they interact with their child and how their child interacts with them. And then they take their child to a doctor's office, and the doctor interacts with their child and tries to get them to make eye contact, to engage with them, to maybe replicate something that they're doing, and are just kind of checking for those social interactions. And that's basically how they diagnose.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Are you familiar with virtual reality?
A little bit.
Okay, you know, I know that they're using a lot of virtual reality. They have been for several years with different mental illnesses,
Okay.
right? And different anxiety effects where um, they can help them overcome different phobias and things like that through the virtual reality worlds with the glasses and stuff on, because they can take them to that extreme
Hmm.
and then shut it off
Yeah.
and then take them back. And how, I'm not quite sure how it's all working,
Okay.
but that they have been working with a lot of mental illnesses on all different kinds of levels through that virtual reality. Do
Sure.
you think there's a possibility that maybe someday, or maybe it's out there, I don't know, where a child that is autistic can work through something like that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So with autistic children, things are black and white. There is no gray space in between.
Oh,
So
okay.
to put a child with autism into a make-believe world would seriously mess them up.
Because of all
So
that, all the neurons and stuff that are
they
like,
have
they're
to,
just
it's things are just this way or they're this way and that's it. And that's just kind of how they set their rules in their brain. So
okay.
again, it's that filling in the spaces kind of thing that's very difficult. So I'll give you an example. So my daughter, Maria, like I said, she's very verbal, but she does what we call echolalia. And so what that is that means that she memorizes scripts. So she'll be up in her room and she'll be playing with her dolls. And if you walked in on her, you might think, wow, like she's so creative. Look at her sitting there playing with her dolls. When really she's just playing out an entire episode of a show that she's watched. So all
Oh,
the language
okay.
is borrowed, right? So it's a problem kind of coming up with that natural language or that natural thing in the middle that fill in the spaces. You know what I mean? So like that's our big thing with her is trying to make sure that she can evaluate what people are saying, you know, and interpret it correctly. And so she's not just mimicking things back to people, because that's what she does right now. So it's
interesting.
Yeah. Echolali is a big thing with autistics. So it's, you know, things mean this or they don't. So you have to kind of navigate, you know. I think it's a lot of trust factor kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
So our children are very picky eaters. My son will only eat this kind of chicken nugget, and if it doesn't come out of that box, or if you try to fake him and like put another chicken nugget inside that same box, he will know. And so, you know, there's just a lot of like this, I know I like this, and so this is what I'm going to do. You know, I know this is the right way to do it, so this is what I'm going to do. And so there's not a whole lot of gray space. So to put a kid with autism in virtual reality would like mess them up.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. You know, because, you know, one thing doesn't always work for everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got pros and cons, and yeah. So what would be, in your opinion here, you know, and because you're living it, right? Mm-hmm. What do you see the regiment that you have your children on, in the direction that you're going with them, to be able to give them the best life out there, to be able to reach that point of adulthood, to be able to interact outside of the home, and to have a life, you know? And again, you know, where does an autistic child go? Do they fall in love with another partner? Do they have children? Do they have a family life? You know, how does all that work? You know, we talk a lot about autistic kids, but what happens when these autistic kids become adults?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, and it's something that I think finally people and companies are starting to realize that if they want to hire a workforce in the future, they're going to have to hire autistic adults, because it's so prevalent now. And so I think, you know, me as a parent, I just constantly work with companies, with initiatives, with things that are moving in that direction. Because I think a lot of this is going to be not just teaching my son how to interact with people, but most of the work is honestly going to be teaching other people how to interact with my son.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, it's not how am I going to help him get there? It's how am I going to get you to let him get there, right? Like that's kind of what the path I think has to be. So there's lots of different programs that are happening. So Mesa in Arizona became the first autism certified city. So they got 60 of their businesses to get accredited as an autism certified center.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
Oh yeah, so they've trained thousands of people on how to interact with autistic families and autistic children and autistic adults. And so I think that's where this is really going to go.
It's going to have to.
It's going to have to. It's going to have to. And I think that's, you know, that's how he gets to have an independent life and how he gets to have a job. And, you know, it's just going to be that whole other level of understanding of, you know, yeah, they're freaking capable. They're sometimes geniuses, you know, and a lot of savants that are out there are autistic. And so, you know, it's just, I'm not too worried about all of that. I think it's just treating him like he doesn't have autism, you know?
Right. It just keeping his, like you say, his self-esteem, his confidence, you know, and that belief in himself that he can do whatever it is that he wants, and not taking him and putting him in over here in a little box, say you're different than everybody else, and so therefore you have to. And I think that's where we make a big mistake with kids, whether they're autistic or whatever, is we try to box them in this arena instead of giving them full reign of what they're capable of.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things I think parents just stop expecting their children to be hitting the milestones that everybody else's child is.
Right.
So with my children, especially like with Jackson, I mean, he is nonverbal, but he's reading the same amount of sight words that his first grade peers are. he's learning how to put sentences together. His writing sucks. But so they're like, well, he has a talker. Can we just teach him how to type? I'm like, yeah. So,
There you
it
go.
accomplishes the same goal, right?
Right.
He's still learning how to spell words. So yes. And it's my whole thing with him, he's right above me sleeping, which is like, keep going like this. But my whole thing with him is, I want him to hit all those same milestones. So he gets himself dressed in the morning, he brushes his teeth, he takes a shower, like he does all of the things that a 7-year-old does. And I think that that's where a lot of moms and parents, dads, like miss out on their children with disabilities, is they're like, oh, they have a disability, they're not capable. And it's like, no, they are.
Yeah, so they want to do for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's harder to make them do for themselves. So, for example, teaching Jackson how to get dressed in the morning, it wasn't like a, hey, put on your clothes.
Right.
It's more of a, hey, it's going to take me 4 months to get you to a place where you can get dressed by yourself. And that means that I stay in your room and I physically prompt you of how to what order to put things on. And then I lay out clothes, and then eventually you're picking clothes out yourself. But it's
a training, kind of a training process.
You need it. You need a program for everything, honey.
Well, alrighty.
Yeah. So
I think every kid out there needs a program.
I'm telling you, yeah. So and that's the thing, right? So it's like, for us, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work on our end to make them independent. But that's what our goal is at the end of the day, right? Is to raise children who can be independent, because I don't want to care for him my whole life. I want him to find his passion, to find his purpose, to go after it, to do what he wants to do. I mean, they have all of these adults, who live in these programs and day centers, and, they have all of these emotional outbursts, and they, have all these problems, but it's because somebody else is telling them what to do their whole life. I mean, who would want to live that way? And so that's my thing. I'm like, I'm going to make sure you're as independent as you can be, and so you can follow your passion and do what you want to do. Because that's what we all want to do, right?
Right. And that has to start from little on. You don't start that when they're 20 years old, right?
Oh, yeah. And that's a big problem. I work with another woman, and she, all of a sudden had this mom come in with her nonverbal 20-year-old adult, and was like, well, can you teach him how to talk with his talker? And can you do it like in a month? She was like, no.
Oh my gosh, what the heck?
Because she's like, this is a whole process. Like, this is a whole process that starts when they're 7. You know what I mean? Like Jackson has been using his talker for 1.5 years now. So it's like, but it's speech and language development that happen with everybody. And usually it happens when you're young. And so parents, I think, miss out by not pushing their kids to do for themselves. So like, Jackson can make certain foods by himself, because I'm like, if I'm busy, I'm like, no, you can get the banana and peanut butter and you do it.
Yeah, because his other says he can hear, he can understand, right?
Totally.
And now let me ask you this too, because an autistic child, okay, do they sometimes have different physical ailments? Physical, maybe problems with balance or something like that, or are they? Oh gosh, how's the word I want to say? Do they like walk and move normal? I mean, it's just, again, it's not knowing the different levels of that. So are they mobile in the same manner as a child without autism?
Yeah, typically. I mean, again, it's such a spectrum, and everyone's so different. It's hard to generalize. They do stimmy behaviors, so like a lot of jumping and rocking and swinging and that kind of stuff. Jackson does that constantly. You should see our backyard has like 3 huge swings in the back of it, and that way they can't fight over them. Because that motion is calming motion for them. So they do it, but it's just like us. I mean, I'm sitting here playing with this while we're having this conversation, but you and I do these kinds of things.
Well, you do.
And they do it too. And it's just this is helping keep me grounded while we're talking and easy and relaxed. And some people wiggle their foot when they're sitting and having.
Yeah, I mean, I have my feet moving and everything else, and I talk with my hands if you didn't notice, right?
Yeah, so it's that same kind of thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, this is fascinating. I could talk with you for hours on this.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so you were saying, that you had these people come into your house all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Therapists, constantly.
Yeah.
How did the children react differently when all of a sudden that activity wasn't going on? Did they question it? Did they act different? Did they lash out? Did they question you about it? Or did they even not notice?
Well, so my daughter doesn't have therapists that come in because she goes to the community school, so she misses her school dearly. So she would go to school today, see my friends. We're like, no, sorry. And the next morning again, because she's scripty. So this is her script. I'll go to school today, see my friends. No, sorry. So the routine for her is really, really tough.
Right.
Jackson probably had the best 2 weeks of his life. He was like, for 5 years, I had people, because you also have to realize, and we're starting to get to the point where he notices the therapist, right?
Sure.
And so it's like you have somebody following you around, making notes, judging you. They're not judging you, but they're making notes on what's happening and the programs they're running and stuff like that. So
right.
I think for him, he was like, hey, this is fantastic. Other families, I interact with a lot of families, and a lot of families had opposite experiences where their children had very traumatic issues with their routine being thrown off, because some of these children, like, you have to do things in a certain way. And so we got very lucky that our kids were pretty okay with everything, but it wasn't
right.
the same for some of the other families that we know.
Yeah, so we all have adjustments, with this, right? And it's that's amazing, yeah, because everyone is different. We talked about, people who have, say, social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're in heaven.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
And no stress. Oh, I get to stay home. Oh, I'm in heaven, right? This is great,
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then you've got those that are socialites. And now they're in isolation. And they're like chomping at the bit. They're stressing out. It's like, I gotta go, right? So you've got those opposite extremes, and it is an adjustment. And what do? We have to calculate something different. How are we going to move through this? And so the first thing that comes is, right, people want to jump into fear.
Mm-hmm.
They want to jump into scarcity.
Yeah.
They want to run and hide. They don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
They want to lash out, and again, it's like, whoa, let's take a deep breath here, right? This isn't the end of the world, right? It's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
Let's begin to get creative.
Yeah.
Right? And know that there's plenty to go around, this too shall pass,
Right.
and, so it's interesting. Everyone's household is different,
Mm-hmm.
right? And thank you for sharing, your household and how you went and how this has impacted you with your children. And like you said, with other families that you associate with, we're just completely the opposite.
Yeah, we also know a lot of families who have very medically fragile children. And so they are rightly freaked out about what's happening, because either they can't get a hold of their medicines that they need because they come from China, or they can't get enough of the food that they need because everybody went crazy.
Oh, that is just
toilet
insane.
paper.
Yeah.
And it's like, for these kids, it really is life and death. Like, they do need to stay inside their home for 2 or 3 months, and that those family members have to stay in.
Right.
And so for them, it's been pretty scary. But I love our community because our community is like, what do you need?
Yeah.
We go out.
What do you need? We got extra over here. What do you need? What do you need?
Yeah.
And what I've noticed
we
around
take
here,
care of them.
that,
for sure.
and that's great. And
Yeah.
I think it's bringing people back together, which it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
I did speak with a gal at the grocery store here about a week ago, with what was going on. And now what they're doing is they're opening the early morning, hour and a half, for 60 and over, right?
Yeah.
Because what she told me, she said, we know, and of course they do, they know what the normal sale is,
Yeah.
right? And so what they do is they stock that shelf as if it were a normal day and only put that volume there. And then being able to let those that are on restricted, finances or whatever, where they can't buy in bulk, even if they wanted to, they don't have the means to. And it's sad because, I don't want to go out there and stock up on all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's where are you going to put it, right? And, but at the
toilet
same
paper,
time,
I'm like, where did you put all that toilet paper?
I know, isn't that crazy? It's coming out the wrong end,
It's crazy.
So then again, it's like, well, now here you are being the reasonable one, wanting not to stock, and everything. But it's like, do you buy like one extra just in case the next time you go, that there might not be any there, so you got a spare, it's just, so it really knocks the curve downhill for everybody. And and it's sad that you've got, it's like a Gestapo in the grocery store or any store that you go into. One case of water, one roll of toilet paper, one sanitizer. Someone's like, that is like, are you serious?
Yeah. People are crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm happy they finally did that because I was like, can somebody regulate this? Like, why are we?
And it's unfortunately that we have to be regulated like that, to the point of limiting. It's crazy. But again, you like you say, you have to. Down here where I'm at, outside of Farmington, we're not that far from the reservation, so you have a lot of natives coming in, right? And they were coming in to get water and baby formula and diapers and things like that, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. Well, where do you go? And they drove, a lot of them drive, anywhere from 1.5 to 2 hours just to get into the stores. And then, and we're kind of like on the outskirts. Yeah. And now they had to drive completely into town, which is another half an hour to get into town. And those stores are still empty.
Yeah, that's rough.
So to be able to start to regulate that, and so they some of the stores are opening not only just to parents like that, the older people, but to
special needs
mothers
parents
and stuff like that who need those kind of needs and stuff. So it's great to see that something's being done with that. At the same time, it makes you wonder, why did it have to come to that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why did it have to come to that?
Yeah.
So, what makes these brains tick up here sometimes? You're the scientist. What makes these brains tick up there like that?
No. Well, it's funny because in Arizona, it's like other states, have to prepare sometimes for like, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks, because there's like a hurricane coming or there's, snowstorm. It's like Arizona, we're like, what? We just stay in our side, like we just stay in our house, like we can't leave. It's weird. I don't know what to do.
What do I do? What do you mean I can't go outside?
And it's not summer, so we can't like just go into the pool. So
right.
Weird. It's very weird.
Yeah. Well, Michele, I think we're gonna wrap this show up, and we definitely need to get you back on again. So anyone out there, if you want to connect with Michele, give us your connections again, Michele.
Yeah, it's the website is www.damesusa.com.
damesusa.com. That is what a beautiful story, and what a beautiful family you have. And I so appreciate you coming on and sharing this, because it really helped me to understand autism from a whole different perspective that I had no clue about. So I know there's a lot of our audiences out there that also is going to love to hear what you have to say about this, and even those that may have family members, and hopefully what you shared, it's going to help them to understand, with the family members, of how they can interact and associate with them and not feel like they're tainted, or they got to stay away because they don't know how to act and they don't want to say the wrong thing. It's all about just being you. Just be you.
Treat them like a kid.
Let them be them, right?
Yeah.
Because they are. They're still a kid.
Yeah.
That's right. And, some of us are still kids too.
Yeah.
That's why, I always use the excuse, I'm short, so I didn't have to grow up to be an adult. So It's okay, right?
Cute.
So, again, thank you so much for sharing and being here with us today. And it's time to say, go out there and be the best you that you can be. Michele and I are going to go out, and we're going to be the best us that we can be, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see you all on the next show. Thanks for joining us. What?